but let's be real, it's never really been my thing. That is, until you guys decided otherwise. I ran a massive poll back in December asking which horror series I should cover next, and after a close tie, the winner was Magical Girl Apocalypse. This series takes the innocent, sparkly image of magical girls and completely flips it on its head, blending gore, terror, and chaos into a nightmare you can't look away from. Over the next 4 videos, we'll be diving deep into this series volume by volume because, trust me, there is a ton to unpack here. So today, let's kick things off and find out what makes Magical Girl Apocalypse stand out from its sugar-coated predecessors. Kogami Ki is a freshman in high school, living a dull and uneventful life. The only thing that sparks any interest is his crush, Inui Natsuki. Meanwhile, his childhood friend, Fukimoto Sukune, endures constant bullying from her classmates. During class, Kogami stares out the window and notices the gym teacher talking to a strange young girl. She is wearing a black puffy dress and holding a particular umbrella-like staff with a ball at the tip. The gym teacher tells her that she isn't allowed inside. In response, the girl blows his head off. Shocked, Kogami tries to brush it off as in staff with a ball at the tip. The gym teacher tells her that she isn't allowed inside. In response, the girl blows his head off. Shocked, Kogami tries to brush it off as his imagination, but when he looks back, the girl is staring straight at him. As he excuses himself to go to the bathroom, the girl suddenly leaps through the classroom window. Kogami hears the chaos and grabs a baseball bat, rushing back to find the girl slaughtering his entire class. Inui makes a small noise, drawing the girl's attention. Just as the girl prepares to attack, Kogami slams the bat into her head. However, despite his efforts, the girl manages to kill her right in front of him. In a fit of rage, Kogami repeatedly bashes the girl's skull in until she stops moving. Kogami believes that he is the only survivor, but it turns out that Sukune had been hiding in the classroom closet the whole time. Another student, Arimura, also survived by pretending to be dead, but to their horror, the magical girl regenerates, her head rebuilding itself as if nothing happened. Before they can react, a zombified student appears behind Arimura and crushes his head. The other students in the classroom begin rising as undead zombies, their bodies resonating with the magical girl's body. They charge at Kogami and Sukune, who realize that the entire school is under attack. Amid the chaos, an older boy bursts in to help them escape. He takes them to a smaller group of survivors. The group bickers over what to do but eventually comes up with a plan. They'll steal keys from the staff parking lot and escape the school in a car. Before they leave, they check Twitter and discover that the attacks aren't limited to their school. It's happening across all of Japan. They leap out a window and see a massive pentagram in the sky. The pentagram cracks, then shatters as countless versions of the magical girl descend from above. The group reaches the car, but there's a problem. It won't fit all 7 of them. Tensions flare when one of the survivors suggests leaving Kogami and Sukune behind. However, before anything can be decided, the fat boy and little girl in the group are burned to a crisp. The remaining survivors pile into the car and speed off, but a magical girl with a fire-breathing dog pursues them. Zombies swarm the vehicle as the dog readies another fireball. Thinking quickly, Kogami throws a bottle of sake, causing an explosion that takes out the magical girl, as they manage to escape the schoolyard. The group introduces themselves. The woman is named Yuruka, and the 2 boys are Godai and Kasai. Together, they try to make sense of the apocalypse that has consumed their world. Kasai has a radio app that broadcasts a state of emergency, with the government mobilizing defense forces across Japan. But as they listen, the announcement abruptly changes. The magical girls are attacking them. Their journey then brings them to a foggy roadblock. As they venture into the mist, the magical girl with the fire-breathing dog appears, fully regenerated. Suddenly, Godai and Kasai's heads are blown off. The fog is filled with magical chants, and their heads are blown off. Suddenly, their journey then brings them to a foggy roadblock. As they venture into the mist, the magical girl with the fire-breathing dog appears, fully regenerated. Suddenly, Godai and Kasai's heads are blown off. The fog is filled with magical chants, and the group runs out of the mist, encountering another magical girl, this one with a grotesque eyeball in her mouth. As they continue through the city, they witness horrifying scenes, citizens being murdered by zombies and a magical girl sucking people up into the sky, forming a giant spear of bodies before dropping them to the ground. The impact splatters the victims, transforming them into even more zombies. In their desperate escape, the group encounters two girls fighting off a zombie. To their shock, the girls are Miki and Kaede, the same bullies who tormented Sukune. True to form, Miki and Kaede begin berating Sukune, but Yuruka quickly intervenes, urging everyone to just focus on surviving. The group decides to head towards a mall, but Kaede falls behind. As she lags further, it becomes apparent that she has turned into a zombie. The volume ends with the group successfully reaching the safety of the mall, at least for now. Today, the best day ever is about to begin. Today, the best day ever is about to begin. The second volume begins with the group in the mall, where they come face to face with a cop standing with his genitals exposed. Two violated and dead women lie on the floor nearby. The cop points his gun at the group and attempts to assault Yuruka and Sukune. Miku tries to intervene, but the cop shoots her in the leg. Before he can continue, the cop is struck in the back of the head with a shovel. The man wielding the shovel is Ren, a medical student searching for a job. Ren informs the group that there are more survivors gathered in the mall's food court. Meanwhile, Kaede enters a shop to search for medical supplies, but becomes possessed by a magical girl. In her possessed state, Kaede sees a young girl enter the room and transfers the magical girl's soul into the child's body. The group then heads to the food court, which is filled with frightened survivors. Among them, Kogami spots a familiar face, his deaf classmate, Himeji. While there, Yuruka excuses herself to go to the bathroom, where she vomits blood, a side effect of the spear attack from earlier in the city. Ren discovers this and informs her that her stomach is bleeding eternally. He warns that she should find a doctor as soon as possible once they leave the mall. Suddenly, helicopters are heard outside. The group rushes to the roof in an attempt to flag them down, but the helicopters ignore them. As they return inside, Himeji begins panicking, while Kaede and Miki declare that the young girl is the devil. Back at the food court, the little girl begins slaughtering everybody. She grows a magical girl from the top of her head, horrifying the group. Ren points a gun at the child but hesitates when the magical girl speaks, warning him that shooting her would kill the child as well. The group attempts to flee, but the magical girl catches up and punches Miki's head off her body. Ren then fires his gun but misses, leaving only 2 bullets remaining. Desperate, the group realizes that they need someone with shooting experience. They run over to the cop and beg him to shoot the magical girl. Though he doesn't understand what's going on, the cop takes a shot, aiming directly at her eye. However, she stops the bullet midair and launches it back at them, hitting Ren in the ribs. Kogami quickly devises a plan though. They lure the magical girl to the bathroom where she corners the cop. As she charges at him, Kogami dumps water on her, temporarily disorientating her. Yuruka then emerges from a stall and uses a taser on the magical girl. The cop then delivers the final blow by shooting her in the eye. While the magical girl is down and weakened, Kogami interrogates her, demanding to know where she came from and what her intentions are. She reveals that the chaos is all a part of the Magical Girl Apocalypse project. The magical girls were created to ensure the game progresses towards its finale. However, she cannot dive deeper into the truth, as doing so would result in her immediate death by that person. As she speaks, the magical girl leaves the child's body. The cop, assuming it is a mosquito, squishes the magical girl. Her wand falls to the ground and then it shatters, causing her to dissolve into powder. The group realizes that the magical girl's wands are their weakness. Breaking the wands ensures their death. After healing their wounds and then changing into new clothes, the group decides to stay in the mall. They decide to connect with each other, with Kogami comforting Kaede after Miki's death, Yuruka and Sukune talking about her crush on Kogami, and the cop getting handcuffed in the bathroom. They plan to turn the mall into a base. base and gather weapons to fight off the magical girls. Kaede explains that she killed a magical zombie earlier by decapitating it. So now the group knows the weakness of both the magical zombies and the magical girls. The group works together to board up windows, gather food and water, and create weapons for defense. Meanwhile, in a neighboring city, a group of military soldiers fight off magical zombies. Their efforts are cut short when they are crushed by a giant magical girl's foot. The loud rumbling wakes the group in the mall. They look outside to see a kaiju-sized magical girl rampaging through the city. Helicopters arrive to confront it, but one is struck and sent spiraling towards the mall. The helicopter crashes into the side of the building. Kogami attempted to grab Sukune before the crash, but the group is separated in the chaos. The cop survives and finds Kogami and Kaede both badly injured. Himeji then joins them and points to Ren, Yuruka, and Sukune, who are fleeing from the magical zombies. The trio are heading towards the medical school in search of treatment. Kogami tries to go after them, but Kaede stops him, insisting that they wait for rescue instead. Kogami says that he has to because he cares about Sukune, but Kaede questions why he didn't care when she was actually getting bullied back at school. She begins to reveal something about Sukune, saying that she made, but before she can finish, a robotic magical girl appears behind her. The robotic magical girl fires a plasma ball at them, but they narrowly dodge them. However, both Himeji and Kaede are hit by another plasma blast, leaving Kogami and the cop to face the same fate. Meanwhile, Yuruka and Sukune continue running, but Ren collapses, urging them to leave him behind. Yuruka refuses, vowing to not abandon him. She fights off a magical zombie, and then Ren confesses his feelings for her. He proposes that after they survive, they should start dating, with Yuruka technically not saying no. The three eventually reach the medical school, but the gates are locked. Suddenly, Ren and Yuruka collapse as another magical girl appears behind them. Sukune spits up blood while the robotic magical girl leaves the mall, eradicating everyone there. The volume then ends with two hooded figures looking over the city. One of them questions why they created a magical girl like that. The other responds that the detours are necessary to ensure the happy ending. School. So today's the last day. It's like everything's a lie. It's going to turn out to be quite an exciting day. The third volume begins with a ball of lightning spawning in the middle of a park. Kogami appears in the park alive. He walks around the city noticing that everything seems calm and busy with people. He approaches a group of nerds talking about a Japanese idol and he begins to ask questions. However, something feels off. He then asks what year it is, and they reply that it's 2002, 10 years before the magical girl attack. However, he walks light, quite an exciting the last, and the other responds that one of them questions why they created a magical girl like that. The other responds that the detours are necessary to ensure the happy ending. School. So today's the last day. It's like everything's a lie. It's going to turn out to be quite an exciting day. The third volume begins with a ball of lightning spawning in the middle of a park. Kogami appears in the park alive. He walks around the city noticing that everything seems calm and busy with people. He approaches a group of nerds talking about a Japanese idol and he begins to ask questions. However, something feels off. He then asks what year it is, and they reply that it's 2002, 10 years before the magical girl attacks. Kogami then sees the cop Akuda being restrained by some police officers who claim not to recognize him. Kogami then intervenes, pretending Akuda is just cosplaying, and the two escape into hiding. They discuss the situation and realize that they've time traveled back 10 years, likely saved by the magical girl robot. Now they must figure out what to do next. Kogami realizes that the younger versions of themselves are likely running around at this moment. Akuda decides to figure out a plan after taking a bath, leaving Kogami alone to contemplate Sukune. Akuta calls for a taxi, but ends up knocking out the driver unconscious. Kogami goes to his old house and finds Kanade waiting for him. She remembered that he used to live there, but their conversation is interrupted by screams coming from inside the house. A younger Kogami runs out, looking back at them before continuing to flee. Inside, Kogami's drunk father is beating his mother. When he notices Kogami, he becomes enraged. Kogami tries to fight him, but Koide holds him back. His father then throws his mother out of the house, and Kogami tells her to never give up on life, reassuring her that there's a brighter future ahead. His mother committed suicide when he was in the 3rd grade. A year later, his father was arrested for theft and later died in prison. Afterward, Kogami lived with his grandparents, but his happiest moments were at Sukune's house, where she brought him joy. Kaede then hugs him, revealing that she liked him too. She reminisces about giving him chocolates on Valentine's Day in elementary school, and in return he gifted her a hair clip to fix her messy hair. She remembers when Kogami would stand up for her when she was getting bullied. She then drops a bombshell. She confesses that Sukune had been threatening her for years. Sukune forced her and Miki to bully her to get Kogami's attention. Sukune wanted to play the tragic heroine, waiting for her white knight to save her. Despite being friends in elementary school, Sukune started acting strange, threatening to kill Kaede and Miki if they disobeyed her. Their parents suffered from mysterious accidents and illnesses, leaving them no choice but to comply. Kogami refuses to believe her and then accuses her of lying. Kaede gives him one more chance to believe her, but he just walks away. Meanwhile, Akuta leaves the bathhouse and notices that the taxi driver has regained consciousness and reports him to the police. Kogami then wanders the city thinking about Kaede's revelation and ends up in front of Sukune's house. Sukune's father sees him and notices his injuries, inviting him inside so he could treat him as he's a doctor. Sukune's mother and father treat him kindly, and when Sukune enters holding a treasure chest, she seems very uneasy. After spilling some snacks on the stairs, Kogami helps her clean it up. At a gas station, Koide is lured to a karaoke bar by 3 men under the gist of friendliness, but when she tries to leave, they pin her down at knife point and begin to assault her. Back at Sukune's house, Kogami asks to go to the bathroom. However, he sneaks into her room and discovers her treasure chest. Inside, he finds shocking demonic drawings of all of the magical girls that would appear 10 years later. Sukune's father catches him and accuses him of being a thief, forcing him to leave. Before leaving though, Kogami grabs an item from Sukune's desk and asks her father if Sukune has been acting strangely. Her father cryptically responds, "Who are you people?" but doesn't elaborate before kicking him out. We cut to Akuta fantasizing about Yuruka a lot, saying that he wants the real thing and wishes to go back to the present. As he looks out the window though, he notices someone familiar. At the karaoke bar, Himeji suddenly bursts in and knocks out all of the men attacking Kaede. Akuta, who had been following Himeji, helps restrain the attackers. Kogami, now at a park, sulks about Sukune's possible connection to the Magical Girl Apocalypse project. A woman named Hikaru, a struggling manga artist, finds him and offers to help him. She takes him to her home, where she shares her dreams of success and how this manga might be her last chance. Kogami falls asleep and has nightmares, prompting Hiruka to comfort him by staying close. Akuta ties up all of the boys and then he starts beating them up, saying that he's going to try to stop the apocalypse from happening, so he's going to have to live out his life in these next 10 years. He then asks Kaede where Yuruka lives. Akuta spies on Yuruka, waiting outside her house until she steps out to take out the trash. He had tied up Himeji and Kaede in front of the karaoke men. He attempts to stab her but disappears mysteriously. The karaoke attacker disappears and Kaede in front of the karaoke man steps out to take out the trash. He had tied up on Yuruka, waiting outside Kaede where Yuruka lives. Akuta spies on Yuruka, waiting outside her house until she steps out to take out the trash. He had tied up Himeji and Kaede in front of the karaoke men. He attempts to stab her but disappears mysteriously. The karaoke attackers witness Kaede and Himeji vanish in a flash of electric sparks. Hiruka then wakes up to find that Kogami had disappeared as well. The four are transported back to the Magical Girl Apocalypse, where someone is seen destroying the robotic Magical Girl. A Magical Girl then runs in and Kogami tries to untie Kaede and Himeji, but Akuta just runs off. Magical zombies corner Akuta, but he fights them off, even stabbing one Magical Girl in the head. However, her twin then appears and blasts him off a building. A spider-like magical girl pursues the group and manages to kill Himeji. The magical girl then targets Kogami and Kaede, but is shot down by 2 military soldiers. The hooded figures from earlier discuss the destruction of the robot magical girl, stating that he's learned too much. They then reveal that the Americans are also involved in the attack. However, they're just here to collect samples from the magical girls, but none of it matters as the project is heading towards its happy ending. The soldiers call for an extraction to a deserted island. Kogami and Kaede comfort each other as the man soldier tries to flirt with his partner, but she shuts him down. Kogami tells them about their time travel and what he learned about Sukune and her father, handing over what he took from her desk. The soldiers then decide to investigate Sukune's father's hospital. At the medical school, we see Sukune, Yuruka, and Ren recovering from their wounds. Sukune's father introduces himself, explaining that a magical girl using poison gas attacked the school, but his staff managed to pull them inside before dying. Sukune wakes up, but she is later found missing, having gone to the roof. She calls out to Kogami, pleading for him to love her. The extraction helicopter arrives, but Kaede has to retrieve something quickly. Magical zombies start swarming the area, forcing Kogami and the others to fight them off. However, they start running out of time. Kaede distracts the horde to allow Kogami to escape. Just as Kaede seems doomed, the magical zombies suddenly disappear. The volume then ends with Sukune speaking to her father, ominously saying, "You've probably noticed, those magical girls are the one I." She's here. This will be hilarious. Ah, my prince. The 4th volume begins with Akuda soaring through the air, wielding a wand in his hand. He uses the wand to propel himself to safety, realizing that he now has possession of the powers of a magical girl. Kaede and Kogami are stunned by the sudden disappearance of the magical zombies. As they glance towards a nearby rooftop, they notice 2 hooded figures who vanish just as quickly. Behind Kaede, a new magical girl appears, preparing a ball of plasma to destroy the area. Kaede then makes a desperate dash towards the helicopter, narrowly escaping the massive explosion. At the medical school, Yuruka recounts her backstory, revealing that she has never trusted men due to her father cheating on her mother. She explains that this distrust led her to rejecting Ren's confession of love. Despite her rejection though, Ren respects her decision. Yuruka takes the little girl, who apparently survived the mall incident, to the bathroom. While inside, a magical girl is seen peering through the window. As the little girl is in the bathroom, Yuruka overhears Sukune and her father conversating on the rooftop. During their exchange, Yuruka learns that Sukune is not who she claims to be. She is Asuka, and she is responsible for the magical girl apocalypse. Asuka admits that the magical girls terrorizing the world are the very ones she created through her drawings. Noticing Yuruka's presence, Asuka smiles sinisterly, causing Yuruka to run away. Yuruka then grabs the little girl's hand and they rush back to their room. Meanwhile, Kogami and Kaede convince the soldiers to head towards the school. Simultaneously, Akuda speeds towards the same location on a motorcycle. Back at the room, Yuruka and the little girl return only to find Ren crawling out of it. He warns them of a mechanical magical girl closing in. Suddenly, a nurse appears, but she is quickly taken over by a parasite magical girl, who manifests above her head, the same one from the mall. It becomes evident that all of the previous defeated magical girls have been revived, and they begin pursuing the group. Ren is attacked by one of the magical girls, leaving him bleeding heavily. Another magical girl stabs him in the foot, but a fireball distracts her long enough for Ren to escape. On the rooftop, Sukune's father confronts Asuka, demanding to know her true intentions. Asuka declares that no harm would come to him because this world was designed to bring her and Kogami together. Ren, now gravely injured, hides with Yuruka and the little girl as chaos erupts throughout the hospital. However, another magical girl soon finds them, preparing to launch an attack. Back on the rooftop, Asuka reveals that this world was specifically created for her and Kogami. The 2 hooded figures appear once again, cryptically announcing that the end is near. Ren sacrifices himself to protect Yuruka and the little girl, bleeding out as Yuruka tearfully apologizes for lying about loving him. She kisses him goodbye, but before the magical girl can attack again, Akuta bursts in and eliminates her by stabbing her in the head. He takes her wand, vowing to protect the girl that he loves. Tragically, Ren reanimates as a magical zombie. Akuta is forced to put him down, pulling Yuruka and the little girl to safety. The mechanical magical girl gathers the remaining magical girls, using a beam of light to enhance their abilities. In the helicopter, the unsettling feeling of you not being able to tell what's real and what's an illusion is one of the most effective and powerful forms of psychological horror. I've talked a lot about anime and manga that make you feel like the series could be real, but what about a fictional story where the characters don't know what's real? Tonori no Jinsan is a psychological horror series about a girl named Yuki who lives in a small village with a strange phenomenon that only she can see. The series is currently ongoing with only one complete volume and a couple of chapters in volume 2. So today we're just going to go over all of the 14 chapters that we have right now and see how this series compares to other psychological manga that I've read.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
Also, we are hosting a massive voting poll for the month of December. Starting right now, you can vote for whatever horror content that you want me to cover in the future. So that means movies, TV shows, SCP, analog horror, YouTube video game, anything. Just anything related to horror. When you click the link in the description below, there will be a horror media poll to see what kind of horror media you guys like. Then you'll have 3 entries to put down. However, the last 2 are optional. You don't have to put anything in there. So for example, entry number 1 could be Smile 2, and that will count as a whole vote. And then your entry number 2 could be Five Nights at Freddy's, and that will count as half a point. The winner will be announced on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2025. And you have all of December to vote, so go ahead and start voting, guys. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. Another person is leaving this town for the city. A young man named Ota is heading to Tokyo to pursue his dream of attending art school. A young woman named Yuki is at the station to bid him farewell as he boards the train. Yuki herself dreams of becoming a better artist in the big city. Suddenly, a mysterious man steps onto the tracks, stopping directly in front of the train. The crowd shouts to warn him, but the train appears to hit him regardless. However, as the crowd looks on in shock, the man emerges completely unscathed. The crowd grows hostile, recognizing him as someone infamous for disturbing farewells. The mysterious man simply just stands there, watching the train depart. Later, Yuki returns home and tells her mom about the strange incident. Her mom explains that the man used to play baseball but messed up in an important game, and since then, he's been aimless. Around town, graffiti depicting a man with a bloated head can be seen, and the scene transitions to a dark train tunnel. We cut to Yuki trying to figure out how to draw a flower, but starts growing frustrated. Her older sister, Mikura, comes home excited about her upcoming move to America next month. Mikura encourages Yuki to work hard and pursue her artistic dreams. Yuki, though, feeling insecure, admits that she doesn't think that she's good enough and asks her if she's ever felt stuck. Mikura assures her, saying that Yuki's preconceived notions are holding her back. She compares it to her own struggle learning English. She had difficulty hearing the sounds because she assumed how they should be, and Yuki isn't seeing shapes and colors clearly for the same reason. That night, we see the boy in the baseball jersey spray painting a wall with another image of a figure with the bloated head. A month passes and Mikura is leaving for America. Yuki decides to accompany her to the train station and sketches Mikura during the ride. This time, drawing feels a lot different, fun even, but when Yuki finishes, she realizes that she has drawn a hyper-realistic image of Mikura with a bloated head. Suddenly, Yuki is transported to a pitch-dark space. Turning, she sees a light at the end of the tunnel, but hears footsteps behind her. She turns to see Mikura with a grotesque, bloated head. Yuki cries for help, but Mikura is grabbed by a giant old man who drinks a strange liquid from her head. Horrified, Yuki runs until she escapes the tunnel, crying for help and calling for her mom. Just then, a log appears in front of her on the track. She looks up and the train station is in utter ruins. She collapses on the ground as she tries to figure everything out. Yuki's mom arrives at the station with a police officer asking Yuki what happened. When she tries to explain what happened, her mother doesn't believe her, brushing it off as just nonsense. Apparently, Yuki has been known to act this way during important events. Her mom decides to call Mikura, who answers the phone, insisting that she's fine and that she's still on the train. Yuki accuses her mom of lying, certain that Mikura is dead. The townfolk gather, accusing Yuki of causing trouble. At school, Yuki tries to act normal but is haunted by flashbacks whenever she passes by the abandoned station. Her aunt is cleaning up the station, saying that almost 100 people use this station in a day, so it looked really bad if the windows were covered in spiderwebs. Her aunt asks her about the commotion yesterday, but Yuki says that it's nothing. Yuki knows that everything that happened was real, but she knows that she can't rely on anybody. At school, Yuki is talking to one of her friends named Kanzaki. Kanzaki can see that Yuki is stressing about her drawing. Yuki wonders what Kanzaki would think if she knew about what happened, but where would Yuki even begin to explain? She calls her to the bathroom, but as they walk outside, Yuki notices that her teacher has a bloated head, but no one else is reacting. The teacher tells her to go back to the class as she just stands there, petrified. She screams out to him as if he was her sister. The students around her begin to talk, and another teacher walks in to tell them to get to class. Desperate to appear normal, she raises her hand to try to solve a problem on the board, but then she struggles. Suddenly, students begin looking outside the window to see a drawing of the bloated head figure on the schoolyard. The other teacher walks into their class saying that there was a suspicious person spotted on campus. Yuki asks if the culprit has been caught or if they're from this town. The teacher is suspicious of Yuki though, being super interested in such a culprit. To distract him, she yells out to the teacher asking if the problem she did was right, but she actually got the problem completely wrong, and he shows her how to correctly solve it. The other teacher tells Yuki to come to the staff room after school. Even though she's upset, she now knows that there's someone out there that's just like her, and she needs to find them and talk to them. Another friend of Yuki, Ai, says that the drawing is actually a graffiti from an artist in town, and that there's the same graffiti near the station. Yuki asks her friend to take her to them, but she still has to meet up with the teacher after school. So Kanzaki will go with her to the staff room. As Yuki walks into the staff room, she sees that the teacher is looking down at the graffiti with an angry face. She runs away knowing that the graffiti is used to protect themselves so they won't get found out. Yuki runs to the station to see her aunt brushing off the graffiti angrily, saying that she has to erase it before anyone finds it. The next day, a poster shows up for a grand festival at the Ranai Shrine this Saturday and Sunday. A tourist shows up fascinated about the different folk tales and is excited about the festival. Kanzaki and I visit the graffiti, but it has also been erased. The tourist approaches her, asking about the drawing. Kanzaki says that it was of a person with a head that looked like a potato. He asked if she knew who drew it, but she didn't. Yuki goes to another spot with the same graffiti and spray paints another drawing next to it to hopefully get the attention of the artist. As the tourist walks around the town, he's surprised that there's someone else that can really see it, wondering if there are humans who naturally have antibodies. 3 days have passed. Yuki, Kanzaki, and I are chilling at the festival with nothing happening. They head to the Kagura dancing on stage. The story is of an old man with a lump on his face going to a mountain and seeing a feast of demons. The feast looked like so much fun that the old man forgot about the demons and joined in, dancing along. The demons enjoyed the old man's dancing, so one of them removed the lump from his face. However, the dancer reveals another lump on his face. Yuki is confused and shocked at the change. It's not the same Kobotori Jin-san story. The tourist comes in and reveals that it's the story of the other old man. He did the same thing as the Kobutori Jin-san, but instead, the old man upsetted the demons and gave them an extra lump. But it's a really weird story, since you actually can't remove or add lumps, so in other words, they're not lumps. But if they're not, then what could it be? Yuki drops her ice cream in shock as a little boy is revealed to have a bloated head, with the tourist also noticing the boy. As Yuki throws away the ice cream, She breaks down crying in the woods when suddenly she hears a voice in the woods asking if she's the one who drew the graffiti on the wall. It's the boy in the baseball jersey, Kurumi, who reveals that he can see the balloon heads too and begins to question Yuki. Yuki doesn't know much but says that it all started with her sister. Kurumi says that he just wasn't looking for someone like him, he just wanted everyone to wake up and see the truth. Yuki begins crying again, saying that her sister was really taken in the tunnel den. Kurumi says that she was the one who left with the balloon head and demands to know what happened in the tunnel. Before she could tell him though, Kanzaki and Ai appear as Kurumi disappears. They inform her that their teacher is going away and that they have to pay 400 yen to him. We cut to the next day where the teacher is giving his farewell speech. He trips onto the tracks and begins walking towards the tunnel as everyone wishes him farewell. In the bushes, Kurumi explains that when a balloon head swells to a certain size, it sets off into the tunnel. Kurumi is going to enter the tunnel with the balloon head and get revenge for ruining his life. However, he's not going alone, as Yuki wants to join too. We flash back 5 years ago when Kurumi is in the middle of a baseball game with a recruiter on standby to watch him. As he's about to pitch, he gets distracted by the batter having a bloated head. Kurumi misses and calls out the batter. He goes to try to take off the thing on his head but sees a bunch of tiny worms inside the head, freaking him out. We cut to them entering the tunnel and inside, they find Mikuru's belongings. The old man appears and tries to devour the balloon head but is repelled when Yuki sprays him with boar spray. Although the old man drops the balloon head, he knocks out Kurumi for hitting him with a baseball bat. The old man grabs Yuki and tries to devour her. She cries for help as the old man puts her head in his mouth, but suddenly he stops and looks the other way. He drops her as a mysterious woman appears, saying that he doesn't like how you taste. We cut to the Kawagura dancer talking to the tourist, introducing himself as Seiki Ataru. They talk about the time frame that the dancer got the mask. However, the dancer and his family only came to the shrine around the 1990s, not when the story was actually taking place. The mask was passed down in the family and it's not unique to the shrine. It was the dancer's father that restored the shrine and began performing the dance. The woman helps them escape the tunnel, claiming to be a researcher studying water quality and parasites. Kurumi doesn't believe her, and Yuki tries to ask why she's okay seeing that big old man and the balloon head. The researcher is confused, asking, "Why doesn't this look like an ordinary peaceful day to you? Even though you saw that, why can't you stop seeing it? It's unbelievable. No one in town should be able to see them," so she asks who they are. Kurumi asks what she's planning, but she ignores him, examining them both, asking why they're not wearing headphones. The signal is reaching them, but they're not affected by it. Something could be blocking it, or could it be an individual difference? So she wants to test them out with sensory and psychological testing. Yuki snaps, asking if this is all her doing. She cries as she realizes that the woman is just using the townspeople for experiments. The woman explains that there's nothing wrong with experiments. Without experiments, they would still be in the Stone Ages. Yuki softly punches the woman in the shoulder and says that she won't ever forgive her and runs away, with the woman letting her do as she likes. Yuki thinks that the town is being tricked or drugged, but they just don't notice it. So she has to let people outside of the town know. But how? The next day, a taxi driver appears asking for Mikura. Yuki asks him what he thinks of the station. The taxi driver recalls visiting it as a kid, but since it became abandoned, it has gone downhill. His response shocks Yuki, but her aunt shows up, insisting that she's trying her hardest to clean it up. Yuki explains that everyone in the town claims that the station still exists and that the trains still run. She then asks the taxi driver to take her to the police in Sapporo, wanting to report the culprit who's been drugging the townspeople. She begs the driver to be one of her witnesses, and he reluctantly agrees after Yuki's aunt mentions that there's a train coming. Before they can leave though, a balloon head appears and starts speaking to Yuki's aunt. The taxi driver notices the balloon head and falls into a trance-like state. Yuki snaps him out of it, but he becomes fixated on the train that's supposedly arriving in town. The taxi driver, along with the other townsfolk, begins cheering for the train that isn't really there. Later, Yuki meets with Kurumi to discuss what happened. Kurumi explains that he's tried similar methods before, but the results were always the same. He even attempted to spread the information online, but no one believed him. Curious people would visit the town to investigate, but after seeing the balloon heads, they would stop noticing them entirely. Over time, the town earned the nickname Clickbait Village. Yuki feels hopeless, struggling to find a way to convey the despair she feels to others. The next day, Yuki tries to live her life as normal while researching different parasites. Kanzaki catches her studying, and Ai points out that she's looking at tapeworms. Specifically, Yuki is researching the horsehair worm, a parasite that infects praying mantises, controlling them and forcing them to enter water, where the parasite will leave the bodies to mate. Another parasite that she's studying infects snails, making their antennae resemble caterpillars to attract birds that eat them. Yuki asks Ai if parasites are connected to water. Ai responds that not all parasites rely on water. Some spread by being eaten by birds or staying in one place for a very long time. Yuki begins to suspect that the balloon heads might be the result of parasites, but Kurumi dismisses the idea. He argues that parasites affecting bugs can't really control humans like that, and even if they could, not everyone will be able to see them. Kurumi then takes Yuki to his house, showing her his room filled with notes and incidents related to the balloon heads. For the past 5 years, he's been researching the creatures to the point of ruining his entire future. Over the last 4 years, 14 people have left the town. The earliest recorded sighting of a balloon head dates back to the early 1990s. None of it makes a lot of sense, but one thing is certain. The balloon heads always appear suddenly, without any warning. They question why though that the headphone woman was able to see the balloon heads after encountering them once before. The chapter ends with Yuki and Kurumi coming up with a plan to make the headphone woman reveal everything that she knows. It's a very short video, but Tonori no Jin-san is such a nice... I wonder how much time has passed since then. 2 years? Or maybe 3? It's already difficult to remember. My name is Seiichi Kirishima. I'm a writer by trade, and this book would doubtless be my last piece of work. For now, all I want to do is record everything that happened before it's lost, hoping that someday someone will discover this manuscript. Please, I beg you. I'll do anything you want. Just don't kill me. I don't want to die. Yet. This is the beginning of the survival horror series Hideout, made by Masasumi Kakizaki. The series was originally published in 2010, but gained popularity due to videos made by Wanderer, Spooky Rice, and Fright Ranker. Although the series has been talked about a lot, I want to add in my own 2 cents into this terrifying story about revenge, guilt, and survival. So today, let's head into the Forbidden Cave and explore Hideout.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
But without further ado, let's get on with the video. It all started on the day my wife and I arrived on this island on vacation. We had hoped this trip would help heal the emotional wound for both of us. Seiichi and Miki Kirishima sat on a desolate beach, their eyes drawn to a father playing joyfully with his 2 kids. Seiichi tried to lighten the mood, but Miki's sarcasm remained unbroken. The relationship having been strained for nearly a year, Seiichi had hoped that this trip might be a chance to rekindle their connection. A local had mentioned a legend about a nearby waterfall. If a couple witnessed it together, it would bring them happiness. Do you really believe in that superstitious nonsense? Miki scoffed. Seiichi nodded. Yes, if it means we can leave our old lives behind and make a fresh start, I'll do anything. They climbed into a jeep, heading through the rain-soaked landscape towards the waterfall. After an hour of driving, Miki's resentment began to resurface. A hotel staff member had told Seiichi about the island's dark history. It had once been a battlefield, littered with the bones of fallen soldiers and the ground stained with their blood. This trip was just an excuse for you to do research for your next trashy novel, Miki accused. He had done everything he could for Miki, but she blamed his writing, his novels, for their son's death. The car stops. Seiichi says that they're out of gas, so now they have to walk to a nearby house that he saw in the distance. They put on raincoats and Seiichi grabs a wrench and a flashlight for the road. I don't remember exactly, when I first came up with this idea, but I had pictured it over and over in my head. The moment when I would end this woman's life. Sechi hits Miki with the wrench on the top of her head. "How dare you put the blame on me? I'm not the one responsible, Miki. You are. You killed June." He goes for another swing, but Miki throws a rock to the side of his head and runs away. Do I regret trying to kill her? Absolutely not. She ruined my life. If she stood before me right now, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Looking back, my one regret is that I kept going after her. I should have turned around. Should have walked away. I never should have entered that cave. As he walks deeper into the cave, he corners Miki, who has an injured leg. Miki pleads for her life, but Sechi hits her again in the head, and now he can finally start a new life. Two wicked eyes appear in the shadows, standing behind Sechi. A disturbed boy walks in on the scene, calling for his mommy. As Sechi turns around and back, the boy disappears. But Sechi believes he's just hallucinating. Ever since we lost her child, I had been plagued by nightmares. But it was over now. The nightmares would disappear with her, or so I thought. We see a flashback of Sechi waiting in a hall when a doctor calls him in, saying his son has been born. We cut back to the present. Sechi is trying to get out of the cave, but the path has seemed to shift. He trips over, shining his flashlight towards a shoe. As he's distracted, an old anorexic man with a blade swings at Sechi behind his back, but misses as he starts to run away. He reaches a dead end, but he believes he's just dreaming and screams to himself to wake up. When I realized that that creature behind me was neither an illusion nor a figment of a bad dream, but quite real, my anxiety turned to sheer terror. For a brief moment, I found myself wondering how I got to this point, but I didn't have time to ponder the thought. My mind was numbed with fear, the fear of death, and the fear of the unknown in front of me. Sechi in a hurry climbs down the trapdoor, but slips as the old man stares down on him. Suddenly, we get another flashback as Sechi receives a call that his novel is being cancelled. He walks into the living room where June and Miki greets him cheerfully, having just returned from shopping. He looks over to see a bunch of designer bags on the table. Sechi tries to tell Miki about his novel, but in June's presence, he simply says that everything is fine. Sechi then wakes up with the trapdoor shut closed. He looks straight and sees an underground hallway filled with skeletons and a woman chained onto a wall. She whispers, 8 people. Sechi's confused and asks what those monsters were. She replies, they're all dead. You're the 9th one. She asks him how the little boy is doing, but actually it doesn't matter anymore. Sechi pleads with her, please, tell me everything you know and I promise I'll free you from this place. She replies, they all died, and so will you. Hideout is a very short story with only 9 chapters that takes and a woman. She receives a call that realized that that creature behind me was neither shining his flashlight, but it was over now. Back, the boy disappears. But Sechi believes he's just hallucinating. Ever since we lost her child, I had been plagued by nightmares. But it was over now. The nightmares would disappear with her, or so I thought. We see a flashback of Sechi waiting in a hall when a doctor calls him in, saying his son has been born. We cut back to the present. Sechi is trying to get out of the cave, but the path has seemed to shift. He trips over, shining his flashlight towards a shoe. As he's distracted, an old anorexic man with a blade swings at Sechi behind his back, but misses as he starts to run away. He reaches a dead end, but he believes he's just dreaming and screams to himself to wake up. When I realized that that creature behind me was neither an illusion nor a figment of a bad dream, but quite real, my anxiety turned to sheer terror. For a brief moment, I found myself wondering how I got to this point, but I didn't have time to ponder the thought. My mind was numbed with fear, the fear of death, and the fear of the unknown in front of me. Sechi in a hurry climbs down the trapdoor, but slips as the old man stares down on him. Suddenly, we get another flashback as Sechi receives a call that his novel is being cancelled. He walks into the living room where June and Miki greets him cheerfully, having just returned from shopping. He looks over to see a bunch of designer bags on the table. Sechi tries to tell Miki about his novel, but in June's presence, he simply says that everything is fine. Sechi then wakes up with the trapdoor shut closed. He looks straight and sees an underground hallway filled with skeletons and a woman chained onto a wall. She whispers, 8 people. Sechi's confused and asks what those monsters were. She replies, they're all dead. You're the 9th one. She asks him how the little boy is doing, but actually it doesn't matter anymore. Sechi pleads with her, please, tell me everything you know and I promise I'll free you from this place. She replies, they all died, and so will you. Hideout is a very short story with only 9 chapters that takes around an hour or 2 to read the whole thing. I was afraid that the length would bring problems like depth in the plot, character development, or even pacing. But thankfully, this series made a fairly compelling and disturbing story in just a couple of chapters. Within just the first 3 chapters, I was already intrigued with the family drama. I had no prior knowledge about the story until I actually started reading it, and I was very shocked at the direction it went. The story really only follows Sechi and the only other person with dialogue, Miki. But both of them have such a twisted relationship leading up to the cave that it's pretty hard to read, but in a good way. The mystery surrounding how June actually died could be put on either one or even both of the parents. With the complexity of each character, it really could be either one's fault. I really did think that the old man and the boy were hallucinations, just due to the fact that the story we're reading is the aftermath of a man who has lost everything, and now his past trauma is coming back to haunt him as he's slowly getting driven into madness. But no, the cave people are real, and so far I don't really know their purpose or how they really fit into the story yet. The best part about this series and why it became so popular though is the art style. The art, when it wants to be happy and normal, just looks like a regular manga series, but when they reach the main plot, it's really detailed, sharp, and filled with darkness to match the tone of the situation. It is absolutely breathtaking what the mangaka did in this series. The only complaint I really had is that sometimes we'll get these like spider webs on the panel. It makes it look like it's raining inside the cave when it's not supposed to be. I don't really know what's going to be happening in the next couple of chapters, but so far I've been pretty impressed with everything that I've seen. Hopefully the next chapters don't ruin it for me. But before we get to the next part, I just want to say that we now have a Discord server. So if you guys want to talk about your favorite series, get recommendations, and just connect with some like-minded fans of mine, then this is the server for you. We'll soon be hosting live community events like games, live reactions, and live readings only on the Discord server. So if you want to be involved in this, then why not scroll down and join our community. But back to the video. Sechi is getting dragged by the old man as he gets a glimpse of a boarded up room. Inside is a naked man tied up to a wooden chair, begging to die. We cut to the beginning of the first chapter, with Sechi tied up in a room similar to the man's. How long was I locked up in that room? A day? A week? I can no longer tell. On top of driving you crazy, the darkness and isolation also robbed you of all of your sense of time. It might sound bizarre, but the only thing keeping me from completely losing my mind was the ghastly screams that emitted regularly from the neighboring room. They reminded me that I was still alive, and then one day the screaming stopped. All that time I had been trying to figure out why he still kept me alive, but the answer was so obvious. I was his meal. Sechi is haunted by memories of being rejected by a publisher. Despite the setback, he calls Miki, lying about securing a job. As Miki prepares the dinner, the weight of Sechi's massive death looms over him, pushing him to seek a loan. Despite this, he begs the publisher for any job, eager to provide for his family. One afternoon, Sechi is working on his novel, music blasting through his headphones. Miki is about to go shopping and reminds Sechi to watch June and bring in the laundry. But the music draws her out. After she leaves, June notices the open balcony door and tries to help by bringing in the laundry. He climbs the stepladder, reaches for a shirt, and slips. When Sechi finishes his writing, he goes to check on Miki and June. Looking over the balcony, he sees June's lifeless body on the concrete below. At June's funeral, whispers of gossip swirl, blaming Sechi for the tragedy. His father-in-law knocks him down, regretful of allowing him to marry his daughter. Sechi says that it's not his fault, but Miki confronts him, blaming him for June's death. Back in the present, Sechi pleads for help. The doors open, revealing Miki, now hunting him down. She strikes him repeatedly with the wrench. The monster has a soft spot for women and tended her wounds. She plans to escape and announce that Sechi's death was just an accident. When she leaves, Sechi breaks down in tears when the doors open again, revealing the boy who says he smells like his mother. Sechi realizes that the boy's mother is the woman chained up. He convinces the boy to untie him, promising to take him to her. The boy complies, leading Sechi to a stash of clothes and a machete. Sechi questions why the old man, who he thinks is his father, locked up his mother. The boy explains that she would run away and that the outside is dangerous. A sliver of hope ignites within Sechi. He plans to take the boy to his mother and confront the old man. In another room, the old man is on top of Miki. She insists that she's different from the others and will never betray him. Sechi stabs the old man in the ribs, intent on killing Miki, but the old man intervenes and attacks. Miki escapes, distracting the old man long enough for Sechi to slash his stomach. Sechi screams and chases after Miki, but the boy pleads to see his mother again. While this, Sechi envisions the boy as June. A flashback reveals the aftermath of June's funeral. Sechi suggests having another child to save their marriage, but Miki refuses, admitting that she never wanted kids in the first place and that June was just an accident. She tells him to move on and continue working to support her. We cut to Sechi at his father-in-law's house, seeking his help to convince Miki to agree to a divorce. The father-in-law calls for a lawyer, planning to accuse Sechi of causing his own son's death and abandoning his grieving wife, demanding compensation for Miki. Later, Sechi visits his in-laws again, announcing a trip with Miki. Her father questions the divorce plans, but Sechi implies that he has other intentions. The chase continues as Miki finds an exit from the cave but is stabbed in the head by the old man. Sechi guides the boy to the exit from the cave but is stabbed in the head by the old man. Sechi guides the boy to the hatch, telling him that his mother is below. The boy gazes not at Sechi but at the old man looming over him. The old man stabs Seichi's shoulder with a knife attached to a rifle. Seichi grabs a torch and strikes the old man's face, urging the boy to hurry to his mother. "Don't worry, June," he whispers. "Daddy will be right behind you." Turning to the old man, Sechi declares he's done begging for help and will kill him instead. "I worked hard to provide for my family, so they didn't have to want for anything. It's all my fault, you said? Don't make me laugh. I did nothing wrong. Why couldn't they just leave me alone? Enough was enough. To hell with them all. I just want to start a new family." Yeah, a new family. After the explosion, Sechi, now with only one eye, makes his way to the boy and the woman. He kneels beside the boy and reassures him, saying, "Daddy took care of the monster." Sechi releases the woman from her chains. She asks if he really killed the old man. He smiles and replies, "Of course, I do anything for my dear wife and son." The woman expresses her excitement about finally leaving the cave, but Sechi asks, "Why would you want to go outside? There's nothing out there. Everything you need is right here. I'm here, you're here, and most importantly, our precious son is here. What else do you need? As long as you have your family, nothing else matters." Now I know exactly how that monster felt. Here is where the story ends. The year is 1989, and this is my story. We cut to the future, November 30th, 2010. A couple gets stranded on the island and continues the path on foot to call for help. Finally, I have a favor to ask whoever is reading this. I've been here by myself for so long. I feel so lonely. I want to meet you. I want to welcome you. You, the reader of this book. If you happen to find the entrance to the cave, don't hesitate to come in. Help me. I can't bear it anymore. I don't want to be alone anymore. I'm Seichi Kirishima. You're my family. The series is really a dark and interesting perspective on anthology series like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark were my first steps into the world of horror as a kid. Even today, the anthology format thrives in shows like Channel Zero and Black Mirror. But for me, anthologies with reoccurring characters always resonated with me more deeply. In manga form, one of the best examples of this is Yorubaito, or Shady Part-Time Jobs, a horror anthology series created in 2020. The story follows two girls, Yumi and Nagomi, as they take on shady part-time jobs that pay suspiciously well, all to pursue their own goals. Each job is around 2 to 4 chapters long, introducing us to a new, disturbing entity that the duo must face. While each story stands on its own, it's the overarching lore surrounding the two main characters that keep us hooked. So today, we're diving into the first 3 volumes of Yorubaito, exploring the lore, world building, and the eerie universe of the shady part-time jobs.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
But without further ado, let's get on with the video. The series kicks off with 3 crucial tips for surviving the shady part-time jobs. 1. Expect the unexpected. 2. Gather as much intel as possible. And 3. Find a helper if possible. We're introduced to our 2 main characters, Yumi and Nagomi, who arrive at their boss's house where they'll be staying while working at his diner. After a long day, they settle into their rooms, hinting at a past connection between them. Hama, as Nagomi is often called, mentions that the job pays an incredible $150 an hour, which surprises Yumi, considering it's just a waitressing gig. Later that night, Hama is out walking in the woods, reflecting on how Yumi is like a stubborn sister to her. Suddenly, she feels the eerie sensation of being watched, not just by one thing, but by many. She turns and sees a figure by a tree, which quickly disappears. Suddenly, a distorted face appears out of nowhere, and someone tells her to wake up. She snaps out of it only to find Yumi standing next to her bed, muttering the words, "Stinks." Yumi leaves the room, followed by what appears to be a child. As Hama rushes out, she sees their boss staring into her room. Just before passing out, she overhears him saying they're destined to return to the forest. The next day, the owner and Hama discuss the bizarre events of the previous night. He offers her the day off, but she declines, instead asking who he was talking to. He reveals that his sick wife lives with them upstairs, and they move to the forest in hopes that she'd recover. Now, he's essentially a prisoner to the forest. Hama tries to talk to Yumi about it, but she brushes her off. That night, the nightmares return, with the mysterious figure getting closer each time, only for someone to wake her up before anything happens. This disturbing cycle repeats every single night for a week straight. One day, Hama finds Yumi sitting alone in a room, muttering to herself while clutching a fire extinguisher. The owner watches them from the hallway. The next morning as they eat breakfast, the owner casually asks what they were doing last night. Hama admits to having strange dreams that keep her awake, which causes Yumi to freak out, repeating the phrase, "It stinks." The owner gives a creepy smile, suggesting that they both get some proper sleep. That night, the dream changed. The figure doesn't approach Hama but just stands there, laughing. Yumi wakes her up again and urges her to come to the lounge. As Hama walks through the hallway, she notices the owner's room is wide open. Peeking inside, she finds his wife's corpse. Panicking, Hama asks Yumi if she knew about it. Yumi admits that she could smell something off, but she didn't know what it was. The owner suddenly appears, demanding that they open the door. Hama goes to do so, but Yumi stops her, insisting that it stinks. Suddenly, the door is smashed open with an axe. Hama tries to escape, but Yumi is paralyzed with fear. The owner reveals that the dreams were meant to devour Hama, but Yumi kept waking her up, saving her life. As the owner swings the axe at Yumi, Hama kicks her out of the way and taunts him, asking if this is how he killed his wife. Offended, the owner denies it, explaining that his wife was killed by her illness and that they moved to the forest to fulfill her dream. However, the forest took control and he believed that by sacrificing somebody, he could revive his wife. The owner swings the axe again, but Yumi blocks it with the fire extinguisher, which explodes, giving the girls a chance to escape. As they run into the forest, Yumi warns Hama about something chasing them. The next morning, exhausted from their escape, they're approached by villagers who reveal that the owner has always lived here and that he was always single, despite what the girls were told. As they wrap up their jobs, Hama hands Yumi her first paycheck and asks about the smell. Yumi explains that So not many people know this about me, but I love horror. I grew up on horror movies, I've been to multiple haunted houses, and I even played a couple of horror games on this channel. So it's pretty rare for me to get scared in general, especially if it's something like a piece of paper. However, for the past couple of months, I've been obsessed with this one piece of horror media, and it's probably one of the scariest things I've ever read. Masaki Nakayama is a well-known horror mangaka in Japan, with series like Office North Star and the Seeds of Anxiety series under his belt. He's often praised for his creepy and extremely detailed artwork similar to the likes of Junji Ito. But while those series were made first, PTSD Radio is his best and scariest work of fiction. As of recording, there are only 3 volumes out, and sadly, it doesn't seem like we'll be getting any more. So join me on this adventure to uncover the mysterious and frightening cancellation of PTSD Radio. For those who haven't heard of this series, PTSD Radio is an anthology horror series that follows different short stories that all intertwine and connect at different points. It's a pretty complicated read at first, but every chapter is titled after radio channels and follows what looks like a different entity. Each chapter on average is 4 to 15 pages long, and at the end of each chapter, there is a black page with white text at the bottom left corner, with the next page slowly revealing a distorted face or entity. This series has gotten a ton of praise for not only being creepy and terrifying, but also having an interesting sense of world building and mystery when it comes to its complicated timeline. Many fans have tried to uncover its mystery over the years, but so far, we only have a small piece of the puzzle. In Volume 1, the first 4 or 5 chapters are seen to be random stories. It isn't until Chapter 7 that we see our first reoccurring character, Chifuyu, a young woman who was seen getting her hair shaved off by her grandmother as a child, and then as an adult getting her hair yanked by what seems to be an angry spirit. At the end of the chapter, it's seen that Chifuyu is free of her curse and has passed it on to Kieta, her ex-boyfriend who was seen abandoning her in a flashback after one of her attacks. After that chapter, it starts following different groups of people, like a group of bullies who bully a boy for money until they're stopped by a weird-looking boy, 3 boys who open a cursed box with a doll's head inside, a grandmother and her grandchild praying to a god, and many more short stories that don't seem to connect. Once you finish the first part of Volume 1, you can start to piece together the story, starting with Chifuyu's backstory with her grandmother cutting off her hair, the bullies, and the 3 children. The second part continues some of these stories or gives more context to them, with some chapters in between that don't fit either story. However, fans have speculated that one way to piece the timeline together is by getting all of the radio channel titles and listing them from lowest to highest. Chapter 15 is the first point in the timeline, and it is set in a very traditional environment due to the clothes and buildings that we see. And Chapter 3 is the last point in the timeline, set in modern age. We know that these radio channels represent time due to chapters 1 and 5 and chapters 9 and 11 not only having a 0.01 difference in their radio channel, but also their events taking place immediately after one another. This theory would make a lot of sense if it weren't for a major issue. In the second part of Volume 1, they give us more radio channels to fill in, except that it doesn't fit well with the timeline. For example, Chapter 18, aka the Staring Girlfriend chapter, is shown to take place at the same time as the Chifuyu's storyline, which is in the modern era. However, in Part 2, Chapter 30 is a continuation of the Staring Girlfriend story. It could be that this is a new boyfriend dating the same entity and that's why it's in 2 different points in history, but that doesn't explain why Chapter 28 takes place after Chapter 7. Not only does Chapter 28 show us the first time Chifuyu and Kenta are together, even though they had separated earlier, but it also shows us a copy and paste of the bathroom incident that Chifuyu talks about. Not to mention the number of problems with the timeline and the other volumes that don't make it any easier. Volume 2 gives us more timestamps that don't fit the timeline either. So another way fans have tried to connect them together was with the black pages with white text at the bottom. Some text would be shown as a complete sentence, but eventually you'll only get pieces of a sentence, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end of one. So if you go chapter to chapter, you get a bunch of incomplete sentences and random phrases. Even if you try to match it with the timeline, it still gives us a bunch of gibberish. At this point, no one has been able to put together a full timeline. However, a majority of the stories can be connected by one entity or god, and that is Ogoshi, the god of hair. Ogoshi is represented as this worn down and destroyed statue, but while it's out traumatizing people, it can take up the form of multiple entities. It's known to not only be responsible for all of the entities showing up, but also for all of the worshippers going mad and spreading the trauma of Ogoshi. It's shown in every short chapter and continuation story we've seen so far, but we learn more about it in the story of the bullies. A group of bullies were bullying a student for some money, but were then stopped by a weird-looking student named Hamaguchi. Hamaguchi traumatized one of the bullies, Nakada, to the point where he lost his mind and got sent to a hospital. We see Nakada writing the same phrase all over his room, "Ogoshi-sama is coming." We then learn that in Hamaguchi's previous school, another student who was bullying him suffered the same fate. Hamaguchi has been obsessed with the statue of Ogoshi-sama and is now tormenting anyone who bullies him. Later in the future, we see the grown-up versions of the bullies each getting attacked and suffering the fate of Ogoshi-sama. We even get an origin story for Ogoshi-sama in this volume. A pair of sisters live in a small village with their mother and grandmother. They get lost in the forest trying to find their father, and their mother tells them if they ever want to go back home, they have to donate a bit of hair and pray to Ogoshi, and it will guide them back. After the sisters' prayers, Ogoshi guides them back home and becomes the god of guidance for the villagers. Over the years, the statue began to deteriorate, and when a couple of construction workers tried to get rid of it, it angered and unleashed the spirit of Ogoshi. This volume gives us the biggest piece of the puzzle that we've been struggling to solve, and hopefully, Volume 3 will give us more answers to not only the timeline, but also the spirit of Ogoshi. But sadly, the third volume would not only be the final installment of the series, but also reveal the terrifying and real reason for the cancellation of PTSD Radio. Volume 3 starts like normal, a bunch of short stories related to Ogoshi, except at the end of part 1, we get these pages from the author himself, Masaki Nakayama, who says, "The following pages contain a special collection of true horror stories depicted as close to reality as possible. The following episode was prepared as an apology for the lack of releases during my hospitalization. I drew it in my hospital room as I confusedly parsed what happened to me." After drawing a scene that depicts a man with a rotten mouth, the author himself starts forming black blood blisters on his tongue, lips, and gums. On top of that, he started to notice blood in his urine and purple spots all over his body. He goes to the hospital and doctors tell him that his blood hasn't been clotting, and with no real reason as to why. In the chapter, he blames it on the little Ogoshi bugs he drew in volume 2. In reality, he was diagnosed with ITP, so he had to be hospitalized for 2 months, only being able to draw 6 pages during his stay. The next chapter tells a real story of the author moving into an office space to work on this manga series. In the closet of his new office, he found a piece of a broken home shrine inside. He pretended to not see anything and continued on with his work. Soon after, he began noticing weird occurrences happening around the office, like hearing footsteps on the roof and multiple problems with ventilation, lighting, and electrical systems. The creepiest encounter was when Masaki was on a phone call with his mom, and his mother heard a voice calling out to him while he was home alone and had no assistance at the time. He soon packed up and left the office, but while packing, a physical phenomenon happened to him that he refused to comment on. As soon as he moved into a new apartment, he told his assistants of all of the weird stuff that had happened to him. As soon as he was done talking, he smelled a weird odor coming from his mouth, and 2 days later is when the blood blisters started forming, and the inside of his mouth was rotting. Masaki tried to keep quiet about the encounters and just focus on drawing, but eventually he had to give in. In the next chapter, he details all of the strange and paranormal activities that had occurred in his life while writing the volumes we've been reading. From tamed incidences like every clock freezing in place, to near-death experiences like the people hearing his encounters getting fevers and injuries. He breaks his silence and warns the readers to quit reading for our sake, but here is where he tells us his most terrifying experience yet. Masaki noticed a foul odor at the entrance of the first floor of the office. When one of his assistants went to check it out, he said that it reeked, but also noticed pitch black holes on the ground. It wasn't ink spilled on the floor or holes leading to a basement, just pure darkness. Another assistant went to check it out later that night, and that was the last time she was ever heard of. Another assistant complained about someone standing outside of her bathroom door when she was using it, saying she could see the back of somebody's head. When a different coworker goes and checks the hallway, he notices a black shadow looking into the bathroom window. Every assistant who experienced these kinds of things have either ended up with fevers or just up and quit, but everyone had seen some sort of black shadow lurking in the office space. It's then later revealed that the physical phenomenon that occurred while packing had to do with this black shadow. The final chapter of Volume 3 is another continuation of his true horror stories, and takes place during the making of Volume 3 Part 1. Masaki talks more about the times he tried to tell people about his encounters, and how they all ended up backfiring with personal injuries and hospitalizations. As soon as he reached the final stages of production, the right side of his face started to swell up. When he went to the hospital, the doctors told him that he was perfectly fine, and at that point, Masaki gave in to the forces at work. Something was trying to tell me, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. We won't allow you to say anymore. The final page reads, "This will likely really be the last time I talk about this subject. I'd rather not have to go through any more trauma like this, so I've decided to stall, or rather abandon, any further inquiries altogether. Thank you for understanding." PTSD Radio has to be my favorite piece of horror content of all time. Not only is the mystery and storyline very intriguing and engaging, but the artwork for these panels is extremely detailed and creepy. It makes it even creepier knowing that while we're reading this series, the author was being tormented and experienced what seemed to be a curse. I had a blast analyzing this series, and it's a shame that we won't ever see an ending. However, I just hope that Masaki is safe and happy. And if he ever decides to release another volume, I'll happily pick it up and read it. Whether you think the series is cursed or not, I say it's definitely worth the read. I could not recommend it enough. And what are your guys' thoughts on PTSD Radio? Is it cursed? Is it not? Did this video creep you out? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.
The boy is alone as he stares out into the horizon. Panic and chaos ensues as a mother hides away her son from danger. As he hides, the screams of people running and the mysterious gunfire from afar overwhelms him, until it just stops. The boy walks past hundreds of corpses, trying to find his mother, but what he finds is unsettling. The boy instinctively tries to put her back together with whatever he can find, but in reality, the boy's mother was dead. She had been standing by his side just a few moments ago, but she was now laying on the ground lifelessly. To the boy, it felt like the end of his world, and it was. This is the beginning.
Two teenage boys, Hikaru and Yoshiki, are walking by a convenience store looking for some ice cream. They enter one that promotes a load of ice cream but barely finds any. They start talking about Hikaru's horrible pronunciation and the time that he went missing on the mountains. Yoshiki then asks a burning question he had on his mind. "You ain't the real Hikaru, are you?" Hikaru looks puzzled by that question, but his secret is revealed when his face starts to melt. Yoshiki thinks this is the end until it hugs him, asking not to tell anyone and that he enjoys his time being a human. He doesn't want to kill him. At any rate, Hikaru's not around anymore. If that's how it is, then I want you to be by my side, even if you are fake. Now, I've heard a lot of buzz about this series. The first chapter really captured my attention with just a hug, and I was very surprised that not a lot of you guys have heard about it. So today, I want to show you guys what you're missing out on by reading to you this extraordinary slice of life horror series, The Summer Hikaru Died.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
And without further ado, let's get on with the video. Yoshiki, now knowing the truth, is torn down knowing that Hikaru is dead, even if he's waiting outside his house to go to school every day. Whatever you are, having it by my side is way better than not having you at all. As they walk by small houses, an old woman screams at them to stay back. Ignoring her, they continue their path. We learn that whatever took over Hikaru retains all of his memories, but hasn't experienced his life. The thing wasn't responsible for Hikaru's death. It just took over his body when Hikaru wandered into the woods. Later, the old woman receives a delivery in the middle of the night. She refuses to let them in, but it's too late. They're already inside. The next day, Yoshiki's classmates discuss a scary forest path that a student must take to get home. With some begging, a group agrees to accompany him. After school, they find nothing unusual about the path. On their way back, they discuss the old woman's strange death. She was found with her entire hand stuffed down her throat. Yoshiki sees her head swinging in the distance. Hikaru suddenly says that it's coming for him, but then he claims it was just a nosebleed. In the next chapter, Hikaru, hit by a ball, is in the school's nurse's office. He tells Yoshiki that he put the swinging head inside of him and asks if he wants to see. He reveals a massive slit in his chest. When Yoshiki reaches inside, words nor images can even describe the feeling. While grocery shopping, a woman warns Yoshiki of danger near him and that they should exchange numbers. At Hikaru's house, Yoshiki's guilt overwhelms him. He texts the woman and meets her at a diner, explaining everything. She advises avoiding Hikaru and that the village is in danger, starting with the mountains where Hikaru died. At school, Yoshiki finally reaches his limit. Hikaru tries to cheer him up, but Yoshiki
This isn't my first rodeo. I'm aware that every fan base has its good and bad, but most of the interactions I've had with fans of this manga haven't been pleasant. The manga is Usugoi, sitting at 539 chapters and was serialized from 2006 to 2017, written by Toshio Sako. This has been one of the most requested series for me to check out, and the more that I interacted with the fans of this series, the higher my expectations were. Also, the more I was convinced 95% of this fandom was from India. Still, I wanted to give this series a fair chance, since the last manga I read that 95% of this fandom was from India. Still, I wanted to give this series a fair chance, since the last manga I read that was this hyped up was Ashita no Joe. And looking back, I honestly went into that series actively looking for things to dislike, and I didn't want to make that same mistake again. Was this series really one of the, if not the best manga to exist? Well, I'd have to read it all for myself and find out. Unfortunately, it did not start off well. The premise is our main character, Madarame Baku, also known as Usugoi, which translates into the Lie Eater, is an absolute monster in gambling and participates in these life-threatening gambles. But the overarching plot point is with the organization in charge of making sure these gambles are followed through with and played by the rules, for the most part known as the Kakuro. I'll paint a brief picture since this is going to be the format for the majority of the manga. Say you and I want to gamble for $10 million. No matter what game we decide to play for said money, the Kakuro will send over one of their 101 referees to survey the gamble. These aren't any normal referees, these are top tier Hitman level referees, because nothing about this series is ordinary. Madarame's goal is to take over the organization by surpassing the current leader, and when we meet him at the beginning of the manga through Kaji, the most unlucky and really lucky individual at the same time, Baku had attempted to do so already and failed, so it's back to square one. And just in case for any confusion, I swapped between Madarame and Baku just because I can't decide which one to go with, but for this video I'll go with Baku from now on. Now, it all sounds wonderful, but what I found to be the issue for me when reading the early parts of Usugoi was that because of how high Baku's character is built up to be, and how quickly he shows it's not an exaggeration, I personally wasn't as invested as I would have wanted to be, since I never really felt like he was in danger until way later in the series, and the main intrigue is seeing the creativity on display as to how he beats his opponents. But I think this is the challenge when starting off a story with a character that has already grown for the most part. It's a big mystery you peel back the layers behind why the character is the way they are over time, which in the end results in some of the most satisfying character development, but depending on how much time you take to do so, can be a real test of patience. One of my favorite things ever, the house in Fata Morgana, takes its sweet time, believe me. And I found myself feeling the way Baku handled each person he beats early on to be cool. That's really about it. I know later on in the series we would get to see more of his character and his ties to the Kakuro on a personal level, and how his bonds with his allies would grow, but as I read more and more in the early half, I felt my patience dissolving quickly. I'm interested in seeing how Kaiji grows as a character along with Marco, an absolute badass that's introduced in one of the very first arcs in the manga, but I didn't feel like I cared much for Baku himself as a character, which was the main thing I was looking forward to until 200 chapters in. And I'm aware that the series is building towards something throughout its first half, but it's a very dense read with a lot of exposition, and I mean a lot. And the dialogue can be, in all honesty, a bit repetitive and corny. At first, the "you are a liar" thing which Baku does is cool, and by the end of the series it's the best thing ever, but around the 8th, 9th time, maybe not so much. By the end of the series it's the best thing ever, but around the 8th, 9th time, maybe not so much. However, I think a lot of the issues with the dialogue is just the pacing of it all, and at times it could be because there isn't an official English translation, so I'll give it a pass. Essentially, the first 200 chapters of Yusugoi for me were kind of hit or miss, depending on what characters and conflicts the series was focusing on. It introduces a lot of characters throughout the first half, which in the moment I didn't really care about, and contributed as to why some stretches of the series was a bit of a slog to get through. And I know this sounds like a lot of negatives, but look, I don't think the first half of Yusugoi is bad. I think the action is cool, although you could argue it breaks up the pacing of the gambles taking place in a negative way. Later on that smoothens out, but the climaxes of the gambles themselves are some of the most thrilling things you could read. I think there were just too many moments where I was reading to get it over with and move on to the next thing, instead of feeling immersed in the moment and invested in the outcome of the characters as consistently as I would later on. It's a whole lot of stage setting, which I think was my big thing with Gintama a few years ago, and the story slowly comes together. And so one's enjoyment of the first half, I think, heavily depends on if you like the fights and the concept behind the gambles themselves. I read all the way through Labyrinth back in February of 2023, and I thought it would be more worth my time to check out and read other stuff as well as life was happening, and so I dropped it. Fast forward to the end of 2023, where I let my YouTube buddies recommend me a manga, and I had to read it no matter what, and one of them recommended Yusugoi. Well, now I had no choice but to continue and finish what I started. The reason I didn't do a video on why I dropped Yusugoi was because I knew it would be an unfair representation since I had only read the build-up without the big payoffs. And the main thing I always hear about Yusugoi was how the final arcs are some of the best in all of manga, and this time I would see if the fandom was right. After the Labyrinth arc, which was for the most part enjoyable, the arc right after wasn't my favorite, but I was still optimistic, especially since it felt that after that arc, the chapters went by faster and faster, and the series would really never look back. By this point in the story, Baku's master plan starts to come into fruition, where he will be given the opportunity, if all things go right, to challenge once again and surpass the leader. The artwork around this point onward is some of the absolute best in all of manga, and the fights start to flow a lot better in terms of when to focus on them and when to go back to the strategic elements. The KY Declaration is what I would consider the last of the preparation phase of the story. By this point, we're familiar enough with most of the important elements, and Baku is ever so close to accomplishing his goal, which he set in motion from way early on, as we would figure out. But after this, Tower of Karma is where Yusugoi goes from a good gambling manga with some impressive artwork into a non-stop thriller with some of the best art in all of manga, and some of my favorite character moments that I've gotten to read in the last 2 years. I also started to research more into Yusugoi and the manga sales. Now, manga sales aren't indicative of the quality of a series, of course. I bring this up, however, to show why I think the fans are constantly bringing up how underrated it is, at least in the sense of popularity, because damn near every person that I know that talks about Yusugoi has it in high regards. But here are some of the top-selling seinen manga that I think Yusugoi deserves to be mentioned with. Now, the length of a series can be a factor in all of this, but the only series that has more volumes than Yusugoi on this list is Kingdom. So how many sales is Yusugoi standing at? Look, this isn't a number to laugh at all. 10 million sales is more than impressive, but I can see why an underrated masterpiece is often used to describe Yusugoi. Apparently there was also a live-action version that came out in 2022, but I doubt that's worth checking out. What was worth checking out was Tower of Karma and the arc afterwards. Intense from start to finish, and the insanity that takes place makes me question what the author was taking while writing it. Turns out a Colombian necktie was a real thing. Tower of Karma was a delicate affair, with each character having to push their limits and work as a team to come out on top. and Battleship had my ass clenched in my seat the whole way through. I no longer feel like I need to read a certain amount to put it down. Now I'm starting to feel like I can't put it down. In what way can this manga take it all to the next level, with more outlandish gambles for the highest stakes, and in what ways can I see the bond of these characters tested as Baku gets closer to realizing his ambitions? The more we learn about the past, the more we can see the absolute genius of Madarame Baku and all the sly ways he put his plan into motion far before they ever happen. And so the more you read this manga, the better the first half looks in retrospect. Baku's patience as a character is just as insane as his needs for the ultimate thrill of the gamble. But at this point, I'm pretty sure I've seen it all. In no way can this series do something that I wouldn't expect. Well, how about a game that takes place on an entire island, where you and your team have to find a way to gain a currency and climb your way up the social ladder? The concept behind all of this had me hooked, but I think this arc could have the case for some of the best character moments in the entire series for the overall cast, where some of my personal favorites shine. Baku himself, of course, Kaji, who gets a really nice moment, Soichi, my personal favorite in the entire series, but more on him in a second, and Kiara, who is an absolute legend. Probably had my favorite fight in the entire series, and his conclusion, oh man. If you hear high praises of Yusugoi's cast, I think there is in his conclusion, oh man. If you hear high praises of Yusugoi's cast, I think this is the arc where that really shows. I'll actually get some of my thoughts on Soichi out of the way now, but this segment will have some spoilers. Soichi is the leader of the Kakuro, and as we learn in this arc, had once a friendship of sorts with Baku. But at that time, he went under a different alias called Hal. Oh, and I totally relate to this character. Soichi is literally me, not because I'm some genius, but because I'm a perfectionist. I go by many names, and I have a horrible memory. I also really love the story within the story, the Prince Bee, which serves as a mirror to the dynamic between Baku and Soichi. Another example of this sort of thing would be in Monster, where you have the monster that had no name and how that correlates to Johan's character. And I think I just really like when stories do that sort of thing in the right way. But at this point in the story, we're giving a lot more context into Baku's past and his character and his willingness to now believe in others, unlike what he did in the past. Many different characters get their shine here, and Protoporus as a whole is one of the best arcs in all of manga. The referees also get a lot of shine here, as they would later on, and become memorable, and I think around here the moments of dialogue start to really hit a lot more than in the early half, but I think that's because the context we have now for the characters has helped distinguish their personalities even more, and since at this point in the story we're getting who would pretty much be the main players for the entirety of the narrative, I think the personalities are a little more fleshed out and thought out, and so it allows for more nuance within the dialogue. This is an arc that has a lot of things simultaneously happening from start to finish, but it doesn't really feel like a cluster or a mess, and I'm invested in all of it. But the crazy thing is that the best is still yet to come. Okay, so I asked a friend of mine that's a big Yusugoi fan, and he said Air Poker is considered its own arc. And then I asked another friend, and he said it's still Protoporos, which makes sense since it's like the finale of Protoporos. But regardless, since this is my favorite stretch, and I would actually argue the best stretch in the entire manga, Lalo, who has served as the big opposition throughout Protoporos and Baku, finally face off in a game where they are underwater and gamble for air canisters until one of them runs out and is, well, left to drown. A literal death game where the two of them are pushed to the absolute limit. Reading this part of the manga was cocaine in book form. If the mental strategy of gambling is what you're looking for, it's throughout the entirety of the series, but here, and what happens after, might be my favorite example of mind games in all of manga. It feels like the dialogue moves faster than you can keep up with as these two play the ultimate mind games with one another, and when the twist behind how the game really works is revealed, I was double mind blown. Soichi being involved in the game, and once again Baku was tested in the same thing that brought about his downfall in the past. The air poker section is like subconsciously hearing the sound effect of Sonic drowning while you anxiously hope for an escape. Not sure if I could put urgency and panic any better than that, but here we get to see three characters really define themselves in comparison to each other. Baku in his way of treating others and the lessons he learned versus Lalo and his obsession with the diamond, as I think that serves for like a symbolic thing of looking for the absolute best, perfection, and how that actually serves as a parallel comparison to Soichi's growth as a character and understanding the importance of self-acceptance, true mastery of oneself instead of the facade of perfection that Lalo has. Since perfection is a huge theme for Soichi, and the concept behind his split personalities and having a case of Joe Biden was fascinating, but the execution made him one of my all-time favorite characters. I think the way Toshio Sako handled this here allowed for Lalo as an antagonist to have a fitting ending and leave his mark on the story, as he was doing throughout Protoporos, while elevating Baku and Soichi for their inevitable matchup. If I'm not mistaken, it was also around this time where the author would go on a brief hiatus to have a boxing match, which he won, by the way. So yeah, if this man is pumping out some of the best art in the medium while training for a boxing match, that's some inspirational shit, and you have no excuse not to be hitting the gym. But to have some of the best action and character moments in Protoporos, where I thought the manga couldn't get much better, only for the climax of Air Poker to prove me wrong, was a high that very few manga have been able to compete with. By now I'm deeply invested not just in Baku as a character and all of those on his side along with some of the referees, but also the main antagonist Soichi, which is everything I wanted when I got into this manga. With all the momentum in the world, I'm motivated to see the grand conclusion of this epic story and also get a Rubik's Cube to finally solve it. The final arc of the manga, Surpassing the Leader, is less about the complexity of the game taking place in comparison to Air Poker, but instead the mind game between two individuals far beyond normal human ability. Two masterminds facing off once again. So much has had to happen for this moment, and now that it's here, it does not disappoint. There is a moment of absurdity with Soichi where I kinda laughed, but was willing to suspend my disbelief and the explanation given, because it at least contributes to the tension of the moment, as well as play into the level that Soichi reached through a difficult path of growth. Just like with Air Poker, I think this arc is a strong showing of the character's self-realization and thought process of their opponent through gambling, and the artwork portrays it beautifully. If I can make a comparison, it reminds me to how Shinichi Sakamoto goes about showing that type of thing in Climber and Innocent. There isn't much I can say that will put into terms how good the finale to this manga is. From seeing the referees compete to see who will officiate the match, to the constant tightness you feel after turning every single page. I've brought up recently in some videos one of the many things I've learned from Solstein's book on writing, and that is the main difference between fiction and non-fiction, and that is non-fiction is meant to relay information, while fictional stories are meant to make you feel. While reading the first half of the manga, I felt like there were too many moments, not all, where I was simply taking in the information of what was going on, since the story wasn't at a point, I think, with the characters to make me feel every moment of suspense, victory, defeat. But from Tower of Karma on, I think very few manga have been able to make me feel the level of anxiousness while reading. The payoff of the final arcs make the long build-up worth it, and I would argue the second half wouldn't be as satisfying if the author didn't carefully craft everything to fall into place. If you were looking for a series that has a more enjoyable experience from start to end, then I would suggest Kaiji, since I think that's a wonderful read, but the best of Yusugoi, and really the series as a whole, deserves to be brought up with some of the best manga of all time. Now, as for who comes out on top at the very end, those who know, know, and those who don't know, I'm surprised you're still here, but you're gonna have to read to find out for yourself. I still think the whole clears fiction, negs fiction lingo is some of the most middle school loser-ass shit, but this manga is a really unique and special experience. A great main character, one of the best main antagonists, a really solid cast, creative mind games, awesome fights, and once again, just some mind-blowing artwork. Yusugoi is a series that will take a good amount of time to get through, but it's more than worth the gamble. The fans say it's one of the best manga out there, and I'd have to say they're right. If you enjoyed this video, subscribing and leaving a like would be greatly appreciated, as well as I do.
Shonen Jump is, I believe, everyone's introduction to anime. Series like The Big Three, Dragon Ball, or even stuff like JJK, My Hero Academia, and just so much more. The magazine holds a ton of new manga ready to dominate the new generation of anime. And what's amazing is that it's from all kinds of genres, and of course, including horror. Stuff like Death Note, The Promised Neverland, Tokyo Ghoul, and now the latest horror series that's dominating the shonen world right now, Centuria. Released back in April of 2024, Centuria is a mix of action-adventure, dark fantasy with a ton of gore and horrific events. This series was even praised by the mangaka of Dandaran. So today, we're gonna go check out the first 3 volumes of this series and see just how good it is. But before we start this video, I just want to announce that we are streaming every single Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll play some horror games, read some fan suggestions, watch some really scary videos, and more. So come join us every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern, but without further ado, let's get on with the video. The series begins on a ship carrying 100 slaves as cargo. The navigator asks the captain if they should really sail through the Alloyed Zone, an area notorious for sinking ships due to cursed waters and a mythical beast. Despite the danger, the captain insists on the route because it's ideal for avoiding detection. The crew report a stowaway on board, and the boy is brought before the captain, tied up and surrounded by crewmen pointing spears at him. The captain orders the boy to be killed and thrown overboard, but the slaves protest. The captain argues that he only brought enough food for the crew and the 100 slaves, leaving no room for extras. However, a pregnant woman offers to share her portion, and some of the men join in, volunteering to split their rations. Reluctantly, the captain allows the boy to stay. assigning him the title of slave number 101. Later, the pregnant woman asks the boy why he snuck onto the ship. He explains that he wants to earn a living and buy his freedom. The boy then asks why she saved him. She responds that slaves value compassion, something that he struggles to understand. She tells him that helping out others, even for no reward, allows them to maintain their pride as human beings. She shows him a knife that her husband gave her, and the boy offers to polish it. The boy shares his past, his husband gave her, and the boy offers to polish it. The boy shares his past. His mother sold him to a blacksmith who would burn him if he made any mistakes. Eventually, he killed the blacksmith by cracking his skull to escape. He confesses that no one, not even his own mother, has ever shown him compassion. The woman introduces herself as Mira, and the boy reveals his name is Julian. That night, Julian asks Mira when her baby is due. She says that she hopes to give birth upon reaching the due continent. Julian feels the baby kick, and Mira tells him that she would suffer for the rest of her life to ensure that child's safety. Julian, unable to fully grasp her words, feels a strange sense of unease. Mira hugs him, reassuring him that love and kindness exist even in a world like theirs. On another sleepless night, Mira opens up to Julian. She admits that she doesn't feel worthy of being called a good mother. She once had a son Julian's age who died protecting her and her unborn child from slave traders. Mira calls herself a failure but vows to ensure her baby is born safely. Julian then hugs her, assuring her that the baby will find happiness in this world. After a day of hard labor, Mira calls Julian over to marvel at the star-filled night sky. One stormy night though, the captain orders the slaves to be brought on deck to be killed, reasoning that their deaths could be passed off as an accident, allowing him to profit from insurance claims. The crew begins slaughtering the slaves, but the slaves protect Mira and Julian. When the captain orders Mira and Julian to be killed, something extraordinary happens. The raindrops suddenly freeze mid-air, and tentacles sprout from behind Mira and Julian, forming into a humanoid creature. The being asks,
"Do you seek my blessing? 1. You must sacrifice a large number of souls. 2. You must sacrifice a pure love. I shall grant my blessing to the one who satisfies both these conditions. One shall die, while the other shall be blessed and obtain grace."
Julian orders Mira slaughtering stuff as slaves to be brought on deck to be killed. One stormy night though, the captain orders the slaves to be brought on deck to be killed, reasoning that their deaths could be passed off as an accident, allowing him to profit from insurance claims. The crew begins slaughtering the slaves, but the slaves protect Mira and Julian. When the captain orders Mira and Julian to be killed, something extraordinary happens. The raindrops suddenly freeze mid-air, and tentacles sprout from behind Mira and Julian, forming into a humanoid creature. The being asks,
"Do you seek my blessing? 1. You must sacrifice a large number of souls. 2. You must sacrifice a pure love. I shall grant my blessing to the one who satisfies both these conditions. One shall die, while the other shall be blessed and obtain great power."
Julian tries to ask questions, but the creature grows impatient, saying they must make their choice. Julian attempts to sacrifice himself, but Mira begins cutting open her stomach. Julian attempts to sacrifice. Himself, but Mira begins cutting open her stomach, urging Julian to take care of her baby, naming her child Diana. Mira places the baby in Julian's arms before offering herself to the creature. The creature then asks Julian to state his wish. With tears in his eyes, Julian declares, "I want proof. Prove that everyone's lives, that Mira's life declares, I want," asks Julian to state his wish. With tears in his eyes, Julian declares, "I want proof. Prove that everyone's lives, that Mira's life, wasn't a waste." The captain orders the crew to kill Julian, but the boy suddenly creates a massive smokescreen and charges at them with newfound markings around his eyes. The creature bestows upon him the life force of 100 slaves. granting him immense power, speed, endurance, and reflexes. Julian annihilates the crew, even surviving a spear to the neck, as the lives of 100 souls now sustain him. The creature destroys the ship, leaving Julian and Diana on a lifeboat. It assures Julian that the sea will no longer turn its wrath upon him. As they drift away, Julian reflects that he has never possessed anything truly valuable until now. After some time, the lifeboat reaches a shipwreck. The sea then turns black, and monstrous sea creatures emerge, growing envious of Julian. They call him a lowly landwalker, undeserving of her blessings. Despite being ordered not to harm him, they vow to kill him. One of the creatures begin climbing onto the boat. Julian leaps from the lifeboat onto the shipwreck, but he's quickly surrounded as the creatures of the sea begin eating away at the bottom of the ship. Julian places Diana safely on the ship and grabs a metal spear before jumping into the ocean to face a massive leviathan. The leviathan stabs him repeatedly with its needle-sharp tentacles, which inject poison that paralyzes his body. Mocking him, the leviathan reveals its knowledge of Julian's 100 lives. It drags him to the ocean floor, intending to make him suffer. The creature taunts Julian, telling him that he will never be able to care for Diana, and that it would be better to die and reunite with Mira. A flashback shows Julian's mother selling him for a handful of silver coins, not even looking back as she left him behind. He recalls the near-death experiences he's endured, but also Mira's warmth. In his mind, he sees Mira with her arms outstretched, calling to him. Suddenly, Julian hears Diana crying. Snapping him out of his hallucinations, Julian releases a smokescreen and resumes the fight with the Leviathan. With renewed determination, he slices through the creature's body, emerging straight out of its mouth. He swims to the surface only to find an army of sea creatures ready to attack. Refusing to give up, he fights them all and emerges victorious. Taking the lifeboat once more, Julian eventually reaches the shore. As soon as he lands, a woman appears in front of him. Behind her stands a large figure in armor, who asks what they're doing alone. Julian explains that Diana's mother died to save them. The woman and the armored figure take them in, tending to Julian's wounds and providing food, clothes, and shelter. Julian's body begins to evolve. His injuries heal quick, his resilience grows, and he discovers that he can now breathe underwater. When Julian says he has no money to pay them back, they tell him not to worry. He asks why they're helping him, and the armored figure replies that it's only natural to care for children and babies. No reason is needed. The armored figure introduces themselves as Angval and the woman as Titi. That night, Diana is having trouble sleeping, so Julian takes her outside for some fresh air. He notices the armored figure laying on the ground and sees a woman bathing in the lake. It's Angval, revealed to be a soldier serving her country. Julian and Angval talk by the lakeside. Julian admits that he feels unworthy of being alive in Mira's place. Angval comforts him, saying that family is what you make of it. It's not predetermined or set in stone. She asks what kind of family he wants to create for Diana. Julian replies that he wants to give Diana everything that he's lost: a home, food, wealth, freedom, and love. Angval encourages him, saying that he must fight with all of his strength in his unforgiving world. She promises to help him earn a living, but insists that they must rest first. Half a year passes and Julian and Diana settle in their new lives. One day, Diana points towards the woods, but Julian ignores it and returns to the house. Lurking in the shadows is a sinister-looking goat, watching them from a distance. Later, Julian, Angval, and Titi head to a village to find work for Julian. The villagers are distrustful of outsiders and consider Julian a nuisance. To prove his worth, one villager challenges Julian to clear the entrance of a collapsed mine blocked by boulders. If Julian can complete the task in a single day, then they will accept him into the village. Julian agrees and begins removing the rocks. The labor exhausts him, and the spirit of the slaves within him offer their power to help. However, Julian resolves to handle the task on his own, refusing to rely on anyone else. By sheer determination, he finishes the job. The villager, impressed, admits that he was wrong about Julian and welcomes him to the village, paying him for his work. That evening, Julian returns home and creates a gravesite for Mira. The volume ends with the group celebrating as Diana takes her first crawl. The second volume begins with Julian working for a family man named Joseph and his wife, Mary. One day, Angval and Titi bring Julian some lunch, and the group discuss whether there's anything unusual happening in the forest. Joseph explains that the continent is composed of 8 parts woods, primarily used for just hunting and firewood. However, he admits that no one truly knows what lies within the forest depths. His father had warned him as a child that the depths of the forest were a sacred domain for gods and beings beyond human comprehension. Joseph suggests that they speak directly with his father. Although his mind may be muddled with age, he promises to arrange a meeting soon. Julian asks Angval why she is investigating the forest. She replies that the king himself requested the investigation. It is her duty to see it through. The king has ruled over the country for 100 years, protecting it with mysterious godlike powers. The citizens call him the Supreme Lord. Recently, one of his closest allies prophesied his death, foretelling that he must seek and destroy a great calamity. Should he fail, he will be the one destroyed, and the calamity is set to emerge from the forest. Angval reveals that when she was young, the king saved her and her family, and she has been forever in debt to him. That is why she became a soldier. She also mentions that she is not the only one searching. Numerous soldiers and scholars are investigating different parts of the forest. When Angval and Joseph's father speak, the old man shares stories of fairies, monsters, and evil spirits dwelling in the forest depths. However, he cannot confirm if the tales are true. The next day, Joseph will go hunting and promises to inform Angval if anything unusual happens. That night, Julian holds Diana in his arms as she once again points towards the forest. Though he ignores it, he begins questioning whether something might truly be out there. The following day, the hunting group returns in a panic, reporting that Joseph has been captured by something in the forest. Angval and Joseph's father head out to investigate the forest depths. Julian asks to join, but she refuses to let him. Despite this, Julian secretly follows them. As they journey deeper into the forest, Angval and Joseph's father discover a giant withered tree with corpses hanging from its branches. They also find Joseph lying on the ground near the tree. When Joseph's father moves closer, Joseph warns him to stay back, that it's a trap. Suddenly, a gigantic multi-headed fox charges out of the tree. The fox declares that neither Angval nor Joseph's father is the blessed child of the sea, and claims it only needs one bait. It vows to kill the rest of them. The fox mocks Joseph's father, revealing that the corpses hanging from the tree were his former friends, who had pleaded for their lives before being killed. Joseph's father prepares to fight, but the fox attacks first. Angval manages to pull them out of harm's way just in time, though she is cut across the face. Joseph's father fires at the fox as they retreat, using herbs to mask their scent. They devise a plan to use Angval's blood as bait since the fox has no eyes and relies solely on its sense of smell. The fox charges through the woods, swiping all 3 of them aside. Joseph grabs the bait and lures the fox to a swampy wasteland. The fox becomes stuck in a bottomless swamp and struggles to pull itself free. Joseph's father shoots off one of the fox's arms, causing
तूने फ्लाई नहीं करा? क्या कर रहे हैं? बड़वे 10 बज रहे हैं. लोगे वो बड़ा पागल हो गया choose Azus Negus. Pero ammá dyan. मेरे को लग रहा है तुम पागल वागल हो गए हो, मेरे को लग रहा है Boom, shaka, laka, daka. Now if I go here, I'm gonna click anime, I'm gonna click steer to anime. Start. Extra overall efficiency. कहाँ से मंगवा रहा है? कहाँ से? अरे पागल तो नहीं है तू? एस्प्रेसो से मंगवा रहा है? पैसे तो है ही नहीं, वैसे क्या मंगवा रहा है? रुक जा। चल बे, बड़वा रोज जा रहे हैं। वाले Slack. Thanks for changing the playlist video at the end. Full ignore, Mark. Full ignore. जा मामा अरे अम्मा
causing it to sink into the swamp. However, just as the fox
क्या
vanished,
तेरा आ गया?
ノン、俺はもうお前と一緒には帰るんだ。俺がずっとおったところに。嫌だ。やっと君と友達になれたのに。